Hey everybody, it's Lindsay the Lender. I am here today with Aaron Curtis from Florida. He is a loan officer with ALCOVA Mortgage. How are you today, Aaron?
Hey, honestly, I'm doing pretty good. It's a little hot down here. I looked at the heat index and it was 108 outside. So, yeah, it's a lot different than what you guys are used to out there. So,
Yeah, no, it's hot up here, but it's not frying eggs on the pavement kind of hot yet, but that sounds pretty
no,
close.
yeah, I've honestly been doing pretty good. I was in the hospital not too long ago, a couple months ago, and yeah, and in the process of doing that, I think God kind of shows up in some mysterious ways and stuff like that. And I remember kind of sitting there. I was in the hospital for a blood clot, and
Well, let's
uh,
start back at what happened. So
sure.
you woke up and you had bruises, right? Or your leg hurt?
So it actually all of this stemmed from a workout injury. So I was working out like I normally would or whatever, and then I noticed the next day that I was having a little bit of trouble recovering. And I thought it was just soreness from working out. Maybe I worked out too hard, and so I just kind of sat on it for a couple of weeks, and I noticed that it just continually got worse. And one day I woke up and I noticed that I had some bruising on the back part of my leg. And so what I did was I went ahead and got it checked out, and they told me it was a hematoma, which is basically bleeding. It's almost like a bruise, I guess is the best way to describe it, on the back of your leg.
Uh-huh.
And then they also found a blood clot as well. And so to try to treat that, they gave me some blood thinners. And what I didn't realize is that my body did not like the blood thinners that they gave me. And so I kind of bled out for almost 3 weeks internally and didn't know it. And it wasn't just in
Wow.
the leg; it was in the feet, in my legs, in my gums, in my mouth, in my nose. So it was kind of everywhere. And so I was hospitalized for almost a week. And in the process of doing that, I remember one night I was talking to the doctors and nurses, and some of them, they were kind of being honest with me, and it just things were not looking good. And
Mm,
so I don't know if you believe in prayer, but for
I
me,
do.
I just started praying, and I remember God kind of showed up in that moment, and it was that moment that I just kind of felt desperate, and he showed up in the room with me, and let me know that everything was going to be okay, and that all of this was for a purpose, and that he was going to use me in good ways. And so pretty much after that, I started getting good news slowly. There was some different things that were happening, and I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk. I lost all the ability to walk, and it took me a couple months. But the cool part was God used that situation, and now, I'm using that situation just to try to help people. So,
Yeah. Well, and you're too young to not be able to walk. You hear
oh, I
about
know.
people in wheelchairs.
Yeah,
They're in their 80s, not young as you are.
yeah. It's definitely a weird experience being, how old I am, and not being able to do the things that younger people would do, be able to walk and run. I'm a big soccer fan, so I like playing soccer and sports and stuff.
Now you get to
But
watch the World Cup and not play, right?
yeah, most definitely. And but the cool part is it's also transferring over into my personal life as well. We did some homeless outreach ministry a couple weeks ago, and got a chance to hand out bags to the homeless, and not just do that, but also to pour into their lives, and to give them some things that they can use, and to love on them as well. Um,
Yes.
so I don't know,
That is
lots of good
amazing.
things.
You're making me cry.
All I can tell you is that, like, that there's certain things that God doesn't put in your life. He might not have done it, but he's going to use it.
Yep.
And it's a really powerful thing when God sees your purpose, and he says this is what you're called to do. And he basically told me I was called to be a leader, and that carries over into my work life as well. So
Yeah. Well, and when you're faced with your own mortality, it could really change somebody. And hopefully it changes, for the better, like it did with you. But it's a really eye opener that life is precious, and we only are given this one life. And so, it's not only about yourself, but it's about helping other people and making an
yeah,
impact in this world.
yeah.
And I actually told a couple of the VPs of sales after you told me your testimony. I said, I don't know about y'all, but I would love to hear Aaron on our Friday call one day, because he has a testimony and it's amazing. And They were like, "Thank you for the heads up." And I don't know if they've gotten in touch with you yet, but I was like, "You gotta have
I'll call
Aaron
Mike
on."
and see what he can do.
Yeah, yeah. But obviously you had to take a little bit of a back seat in the, mortgage world.
Yeah.
But when now that you're back, you're strong as ever.
Mhm.
Florida actually has that hero program. Do they still have that?
They actually, so it's Hometown
They ran out
Heroes.
of money, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
they basically replenish it every so often. I think it's like once a year, sometimes twice a year, just depending on when the funding comes in. But yeah, they definitely have the program. It used to be available to anybody and everybody, but when they did that, the funds, it just, by the time they put them in there, literally a week later they were gone. And so now they've got that reserved for specific individuals that meet the criteria that they have, whether it be income or there's different stuff as far as like being in the medical field, being a police officer, being in the military and stuff like that. And so,
I
but
love
it's
the
really
state
cool.
of I love the state of Florida for doing that because
Hmm.
up here we really don't have any nurse or doctor or police officer programs. We do
Sure.
have Georgia Dream, which is a 0% interest, silent second. It sits on the deed, and you take that assistance, and it's great for those who need it, but it also can hinder you when it's time to refinance because
Yeah.
those grants are not going to stay in second position while we refinance the first mortgage only.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially when you're in a declining market, it makes things a little bit tricky. I've seen some of that this year.
yes. Well, what's crazy is I've had a couple of people that, obviously we saw some rates dip in like late February, early March before the Iran conflict. And I
Hmm.
actually reached out to some of my clients. I was like, hey, we need to get in on this refi. At this time, it's a good window. And we started looking at the values. And if you're living in an established neighborhood where most of the homeowners don't sell very often, they bought it 20 years ago,
Hmm.
those people are unloading their homes for a lot less than what normally they would go for because
Yeah.
they can, because they
Hmm.
bought it 25 years ago and they owe like 70,000. So it stopped three of my refis earlier this year because looking back at the previous comps,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to appraise.
Mhm. Yeah, well, we've had kind of a similar issue. Florida has actually been hit, I think, harder than some of the other states have. I've noticed a big difference in how long the houses are sitting on the market, and just kind of talking to some of the realtors that I work with down here. Some of them have their property sitting for 120 days before anybody comes in and puts an offer. And it's not like the market has changed drastic enough, that the houses aren't worth that, or that the interest rates are too high. Because to be honest with you, I think the interest rates are, they're in the middle of the pack of where they're not as high as we have seen them in the past.
Yes.
Um, but I'm not quite sure what's holding people back. I think everybody's waiting for the magic fives. I don't know if that's ever going to get here. But I know it's a number that I keep hearing around everywhere, is that when things get into the fives, then I'll be ready to buy. Um, but that Florida has definitely been hit, and I know Texas is another state also that's been hit
Yeah.
as well. I don't know if you do any business in Texas.
I don't, and I thought about getting in there, but at this point, I'm more focused on getting back to Massachusetts. Now that the company has gotten the Massachusetts license, I had to get rid of my database of, I mean, I probably had 400 clients in Massachusetts when I came here, and
Really?
that was a very big sacrifice that I
Hmm.
made to come to Alcova because I felt so strongly about the company.
Sure.
And they were like, I'm sorry, we're just never going to get Massachusetts. And then what do you know? It's
Wow. And then
2026 and we got Massachusetts.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, those people, the life cycle of a homeowner. They usually move they say every 9 to 10 years.
Hmm.
Maybe those people are still around. I'm hoping they still have the same emails because my next feed is going to be to go ahead and get that Massachusetts, and then I'll be sending emails, reaching out to everybody saying, "Hey, you remember me?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
The cool part about that is, at least I see it this way. I think the best part about our job is being able to reach out to past clients, even if it is just saying hi, how are you doing, I hope everything's going well. You never know, like, what you can get from that, just having a conversation with people. Maybe they have a son or a daughter that wants to buy in the future, or they have a family member that has a specific situation and they need to be able to get out of it. I know some people are taking money out of their homes to help family members out sometimes, where they refinance their home to use it. Maybe they have a parent that's going into a long-term care facility or whatever and is going to need some extra money, they'll draw on the cash to do that. Or maybe they're in a financial situation and they need to be able to pull cash out to pay off credit cards. And people don't talk about that enough. They think refis are just for rates and getting lower rates and stuff like that. But when you're looking at how much you spend every single month and you're looking at the bottom dollar, credit cards and other bills like that, sometimes it makes sense to do a refinance and to be able to pay some of that debt off so that the overall amount that you're spending every month is not the same.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's so stuck on that twos and threes rate, but if you think about it, if you're at 2.5 on your interest rate, but then you have, $80,000 in credit card debt that you're paying
Yeah.
27 to 30% on, you're not, I mean, that's not too smart.
Yeah.
And as much as I would like to admire the fact that you have a 2.5 rate and you can talk about it at the water cooler with your
Yeah.
friends, it's still, it's not, it's keeping up with the Joneses, and everybody
Hmm.
wants to brag about what rate they have. But my big bragging point would be how much money do I have left over in my pocket at the end of the month versus what you might have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
You,
how I go over it. And then if some people want like 20,000, a lot of times I'm like, this is not worth it for a refinance of your entire loan. Let's
yeah.
just do a second. Then we
Hmm.
can combine them when the rates come down.
Sure.
Let's do that.
So have you seen a lot of those this year? Have you done a lot of the seconds?
I have. I actually, Christmas this year and through the New Year's, because credit card debt got to record numbers. I
Hmm.
think it was over $1 trillion. How much was it? I can't remember. I think it was 1.2 trillion, but I could be wrong. But basically, I sent out a video over the holidays and I'm like, listen, there's the news just came out. I know you guys are going to be spending. Let's get real. Just call me. We'll get you a HELOC after Christmas. And my
Yeah.
phone started blowing up. I mean, January and February were the HELOC months.
Wow. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, and
The
those figure we have second mortgages, we have HELOCs, but we have these fast loans that are just so fast that it's amazing to me that you can get a second mortgage in 2 to 5 days.
That honestly, it's crazy because I think we think about the traditional process of just a regular loan and what all you have to get, for that. And I think it's amazing. I heard of people doing them in 2 or 3 days, and then having them fund in that
Yeah.
amount of time too. That's crazy.
I had one lady in North Carolina that applied with me, and then we did the application. She did the application on Thursday night. She
Hmm.
did the application with them on Friday. We sent out the documents on Monday, and I text her and I said, "Hey, we just sent out the documents. Sorry, but it's the weekend. We don't send them." She's like, "Oh, we already closed Saturday night." They
Wow. So
closed
you didn't
in
even
two
know.
days.
That is
I didn't even
crazy.
know. I didn't even know. It went so fast, the system didn't even catch up in time because it was the weekend.
Hmm.
So yeah, they ended up closing on it and they ended up getting an e-notary because they're in a state that doesn't have an attorney. And they were able to close at home and it was done in 10 minutes. And she said, that was the easiest thing I've ever done. And she said, all loans should be that easy. I said, no, because I'd be out of the job.
Or AI is going to take over for us.
You know what? I mean, I can imagine AI will take over a good bit of like the easy vanilla loans, but
Hmm.
there's too many things. And right now, talking with my title company, my best friend works for an attorney's office here. They have seen so many title issues, and it's not like title issues from the borrower. It's gaps in the chain of title. It's not recording a second that was paid off 12 years ago. All these
Yeah.
little things that AI is not going to be able to figure it out. It's just
Yep.
going to throw it and say, "Oh, you have a second. We can't do your loan." That's not going to be the answer.
I think the thing that a lot of people forget is interest rates. They play a huge part in getting a loan and stuff like that. A lot of people want to compare interest rates for other companies, but the part that they don't think about is that the individual that you hire as your loan originator to take you through the process does a lot more than that. And so they have to be a great communicator. They got to be able to walk you through the loan process and to explain things as they're going, not just do the loan, but explain to you why they're doing what they're doing and what would make sense and stuff like that. Sometimes you have conversations and say, "Hey, I think that this will make sense, but you can make the decision." Give them a couple options and let them choose. Um, So it's about giving the extra customer service. And sometimes the answer is maybe I might not be able to give you the best interest rate. Maybe there's somebody out there that'll have a slightly better by like a quarter or an eighth or something. But really you're going to be getting the service. You're going to be getting somebody who's going to be on the phone with you if something happens, with the loan, and be able to walk you through that.
Well, and my perfect credit people, I tell them, I say, listen, that guy in the middle of Iowa is not going to be there for you when you have a tax assessment you need to fight, or
Yeah.
you need to fight with your insurance or get a new this or that. I mean, I'm there for you long after closing. I'm there for even your kids because I'm not in this just for, one transaction. I'm in it for a
Yeah.
lifetime. But also, um, the people who might have those internet rates, good luck closing on time because when someone is not accountable and working in a call center, a closing date is a suggestion,
Yeah.
not a goal and not a requirement. And
Mhm.
that was one of the reasons, one of many, why I left the last place that our last company that Brad and all of us were at before we came to Alcova was when a large lender that was about to buy us basically says the closing date is a suggestion and we don't have to meet it. I'm like, I'm out. I gotta go.
Yeah.
We're not gonna be missing closings on my watch.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's where I feel like I kind of excel in the most, is when it comes to after they're under contract, just the communication that happens from that point, making sure that they have the proper documents in, so that, once it gets to underwriting, that it's a smooth process. And I would rather, spend a little bit more time up front and get the things that I need and have them not stress, than to wait until everything's done and then find out, there's things that need to happen, which happens a lot in this industry. I can't even tell you how many times I got a client from somebody where they didn't check the proper documents, or they told them, yes, you qualify. And maybe they didn't. They overlooked some things because it's one of those apps you just go on, you click a couple things and you put in what you think your income is or whatever. And then they give you a pre-qual letter, not a pre-approval,
Yes.
a pre-qual letter. And it's not really worth anything, because the thing is they're not working on the loan with you to make sure that everything's in place to where you qualify.
You know
And
what
so,
they say? They say rockets explode. Um, and so, I mean, when a company has AI that does almost all your prequals, and then you have a 35% fallout ratio and you are perfectly fine with that,
yeah.
that is a problem. And
Mhm.
that's what I find to be the most aggravating thing is that people will go with these big banks. They don't explain things. They don't explain closing costs. They don't explain, oh, on top of your 3%, you're going to need this much money for your closing
Yeah.
costs. And then it comes down to the wire and they're not going to perform, and I have to pick it up and basically run with it. And all these things that should have been done or explained were never done,
Yeah.
or they were counting overtime on a job that they've been at for 2 months, and it's like these are mistakes that basically AI cannot catch that
Yeah.
they end up finding out with a human. And by then it's too late. I don't even I don't even write a pre-approval, and I know you're the same way. I'm not going to write a pre-approval if I can't even back it up. If I don't
Yeah.
have the income docs and I can't verify your income or your assets or the fact you're going to get a gift,
Mhm.
I'm not going to write a pre-approval because my reputation means everything to me. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to have an agent spend 2 weekends with you running, all over creation to show someone who's not qualified.
Yeah. Well, and then we also have that program that allows us to be able to, once you get the documents, basically use automated underwriting to clear half of the things, so that for a fact that the client's going to qualify.
Sure.
I think it's
Can do.
yeah, it can do program, and it works out really well. I love. It's almost stress free, because when you know what you need ahead of time and it clears the conditions, there's very little left on the table of, is something going to happen during the transaction or whatever.
Well, yeah, and you're basically I mean, it's basically like a TBD underwrite in a way where
Mhm.
you're already approved. The only things that you have to get finalized is your appraisal, your homeowners, and your title.
Yep.
When you're getting a can-do approval, it's like, yes, we have cleared the assets, we have cleared the income, we have cleared the identity, we've cleared the verification of employment. Now we just need, to verify the property.
Uh-huh.
It's very easy, and it comes with a $10,000 guarantee, 5,000 for the buyer and 5,000 for the seller. And one of the selling points that I made when I was approaching realtors about that program was, hey, put it in the special steps. If you're running up against six other offers,
Hmm.
say this buyer is can do pre-approved, and we will pass on the entire $10,000 to the seller if we do not close.
Yeah.
And make it a special step. They're more than likely going to take that offer because $10,000 is on the table.
Yeah. I can't speak for realtors, but I do know that like if I were a realtor and I had, three different pre-approval letters and one of them basically said that this one has been, basically underwritten and that, there's not a whole lot that can go wrong with it. I feel like I would want that, because what would happen is sometimes people get pre-approvals and then what happens a couple weeks later, something happens and then the deal falls through. So a client is looking for something solid. They want when somebody puts an offer on the house, they want to know that everything's going to be okay with the process.
Exactly.
In a way, it also helps out the realtors to be able to have a peace of mind. I always tell realtors, I say the reason why you want to work with me is because of the fact number one, I'm going to make it stress free. I'm going to take on all the stress so that you don't have to. Number two, I'm going to communicate. I'm going to talk to you and make sure that even if something does come up, that I communicate with you what's going on and what we can do to fix it. Um, but I can't even tell you. I have so many realtors that before I started work with them, they just said this process is so stressful. It's just we get clients that come in and they get pre-approved, and then we put an offer in on a house, and then a couple weeks later we find out they're not qualified anymore. And it only happens a certain amount of times before they no longer want to work with that lender anymore. And so I agree with you 100% that I'm not sending any pre-approval letter out until I know that everything's fine with the client. And that protects both the client and the realtor and everybody else involved.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the only way to do business. I mean, and I know you know your stuff, but if I get somebody who says that or we know that we need overtime to qualify and they're
Hmm.
applying on a Saturday afternoon and there's no way for me to figure out the overtime on your W-2s, unless you can send me the last pay stubs for each year and I can do the math myself, I'm going to wait for Monday to order a full verification of employment so I can make
Yeah.
sure that that bonus and that commission income is countable. Because I don't want to get into a bind where you're now blaming me because you've spent 2,000 in earnest money and $1,000 in inspections, and now the deal's fallen through because you
Yeah.
wanted me to pre-qual you with a pre-approval.
Yeah. The other cool thing that we have is the ability for them to be able to log in directly to their pay stubs and stuff like that. And a lot of times it will let you know exactly what their income is, including overtime and all that other stuff as well. So that's very beneficial. I don't know if you've had a chance to use that a whole lot.
I use it a
Uh,
lot more than I hope to. So the young people, they get it. They get this
Yeah.
technology, but the people that are my age, and I mean, if they're not technology driven, that thing can be a beast.
Hmm.
And it works great when it works, but then sometimes it doesn't always work. But it really, I mean, it comes down to if it's a mom and pop store, it's likely not going to pull it. If you're working
Yeah.
for, you know, IBM, or I don't even know if IBM's around, and Coca-Cola,
Hmm.
those are ones that are so easy to pull.
Yeah.
The other part, and even when we had the work number is super expensive,
Oh
but
yeah.
they always just bucket that income as other. And what I
Hmm.
really love about our new system is that it actually gives us the pay stub. So
Oh yeah.
if we're having a question about what that other is, we got the pay stub right here to look at
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got a little bit of a kind of a success story that happened this past week. So I had a client that it's their first time buying a home, and nobody's ever walked them through the process before. So I took my time and it just explaining every little detail. And in the Florida market right now, there's tons of houses out there. Some of them are priced well, some of them are not. But they saw a house that they loved. We gave them a pre-approval letter. They went out shopping, and they had a number in mind. They went out and, because of how the market is and because of houses sitting forever, they went and said, this is our bottom dollar. This is what we want to spend. And, they could take it or leave it. And the cool part is they ended up going under contract $15,000 under asking price, and they got their seller concessions to pay for their closing costs. Um, and that's, when you start adding up the value of what you get, if the house appraises for more or whatever, you're going into it with an equity position and you got what you want, plus you got your closing costs covered, so that's more money that you're saving out of pocket. um I know that this market is rough in the terms of interest rates being high and stuff like that, but if you are buying right now, it makes sense to be able to take advantage of the market that you're in. So
Absolutely.
with it being a buyer's market or whatever, if it turns into a seller's market and you have to come up with your own money and there's multiple offers on every house and stuff like that, then you're having to come out of pocket yourself to pay for closing costs. Which, if you think about how long that would take to get back, I mean, what is it, like 12 to 13,000 sometimes for closing costs?
Yes.
Roughly about 2.5%, 2.5 to 3% sometimes. Um, you might not have to do that in a market like this where a house is sitting. You can go in and ask for, there's a certain amount on each type of loan, conventional, VA, and FHA, that you can go and you can get your seller concessions to cover your closing costs. On top of that, if you don't like the rate, you can also use it to buy the rate down. So
Exactly. And I was about to go into a story that I had, and it was a VA buyer in North Carolina. They came to me and bought in Georgia, and they didn't like the area of Georgia, so they wanted to move back to North Carolina. And they were buying a home that was an estate home. And of course, when it's estate owned, they usually do not want to go in and do any repairs.
mhm.
And the family is coming in and just trying to basically close that chapter. So they ended up with $20,000 in incentives on seller paid closing costs. So I had to get creative because on 290,000 in North Carolina, where closing costs are not really that high compared to Georgia and Florida,
Yeah,
um, I was like, okay, we're going to pay all the closing costs. We're going to buy down the rate. We're going to have the seller pay the funding fee, which it was first time use. And then we are going to lower the loan amount by $3,000. And we ended up using all 20,000. And
wow,
basically, yeah, I mean, he was smart because he's like, you know what? I could sit here and back out and find another house, but I really like this house. And if they're willing to give me the money on what I normally would spend anyway, I can now spend the money I was going to bring to closing on the repairs that I need to make.
yeah,
So that's the way we worked it. And he got what he wanted, they got what they wanted, and everybody's happy.
wow,
Um, and here's the thing that everybody does not think about when you are thinking about an interest rate. And I just went over this on a like $200,000 loan. The difference between 6.75 and 5.75 is about $100 a month.
yeah,
So don't focus on the rate. Buy the house that you want, and when the getting is good and the prices have come down. If you want a condo in Florida, it's even more you've got your pick. I mean, pretty much all the condos you want are down there and available.
yeah,
But get your house now, then refinance later. And
mhm,
I've seen some people on LinkedIn trying to give the people like me crap about saying marry the house, date the rate. I still will preach that until the day I die because guess
yeah,
what? I have people who literally got pre-approved in 2020 and were almost sure that the market was going to crash.
yeah,
Those people just lost out on about 50% in equity because
yeah,
those people sat on the sidelines. And now in 2026, the house, I actually sent one of them to one of the clients who waited. The house that they wanted was 280. They ended up, it appraised, I think it sold that year. It appraised the next year at like 460, and now it's over 500.
wow,
So you turn down that, and in 6 years, you could have made that amount of capital gains. And
yeah,
capital gains is still on a primary home is still the only place I know where you can get tax-free money.
yeah. Well, the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is, you can't really put a price on freedom, and homeownership is freedom, no matter what way you look at it. And
Yep.
for me, I would work two jobs to make sure that I had a house versus staying in an apartment and having people stomp on your floor upstairs and not being able to do anything with your home. When you own a home, you can do anything. You can renovate, you can paint it whatever color you want to, you can put stuff in the yard, unless you live in an HOA, and then you got to talk to them first.
Yes,
um
I saw a guy who put planters in his yard and he got a $200 fine. I mean,
Man, I hate it. I hate HOAs. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, why am I paying $400 and all you do is cut the grass?
right? And then
So
complain and send me letters all the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about, especially in Florida, that or the issue that we're having in Florida right now is the taxes. the
Yeah.
property taxes. They've gotten astronomically high in
And
the
you're
aspect
about
that
to
like,
get a little bit of a benefit, but not as good as I thought it was going to be because they're
yeah, I'm
not
a little
going to
bummed.
allow the school tax.
Yeah, no, that's the worst part is that when I first looked into the bill, I was like, there's no way that this whole thing is going to pass because it just doesn't. When the peop-
DeSantis was very sure it was going to pass. And when they actually, the media talked about it was, oh, DeSantis's bill is passing. No, 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 no. A watered down version.
yeah. Honestly, though, anything's better than nothing for us because my tax bill on my house is almost $5,000. So we have a homestead exemption down here that you can go ahead and get. I got that right away. But
Yeah.
even with homestead exemption, it exempts up to 50,000 just for the basic person,
Hmm.
which it doesn't really matter because the values in Florida, they just keep getting reassessed every single year and it just keeps going up.
Yeah.
And the other issue is we have a lot of people that retire down here. And so when you retire down here, you own your house free and clear, why does it make sense to continue paying on it? If you don't pay your taxes, then you lose your house.
Yes.
Um, so it for me it doesn't make any sense or whatever. From what I understand, a majority of the taxes other than school taxes are going to be, I think it's up to, don't quote me on this. I think it's
250.
150,000. Well, the first year
250.
it'll be 150.
Oh, yeah. Then it's going
It,
to
it's
graduate and
in a
then
two
it'll
part.
keep. Yep.
And then
Um,
originally they had talked about even raising it to 500,000 eventually, but I don't know if that has ever been established or put. I haven't seen any verbiage saying that they're going to do that yet. But
Well, and I thought that they were basically going to fully exempt primary homeowners, and then after 5 years, like people who are going to be like, "Oh, well, I'm going to go live in Florida, and so I can get
mm,
no property." You have to
yeah,
live there 5 years in order to get that exemption, according to what I read.
yeah.
So that's also good that
And
people
then
aren't.
also investors as well. We have tons of investors down here just buying properties and renting them out. I don't think they should get a homestead exemption and
Well,
be
they're
able
not
to.
getting a homestead, but what's worse, and the assumption is that if you take away if you give full exemption to the primaries, you're going to raise the taxes on the investment properties. And I'm all for that because, I mean, when it comes to institutional, but I am a mom and pop investor. I do have a
Yeah,
rental property. So what will happen is I will end up raising the rent because when my property tax bill goes to 10,000, I have to pass it along.
yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. And I think that a lot of Floridians that I've talked to, if they're renters, they're against this property tax. And I
Hmm.
don't think that they're really thinking this through because, I mean, if it's going to exempt, a good bit of people from a certain amount, or if this bill is going to raise taxes on the investors, I think that's going to hinder renters from voting for it because they know that that's going to be passed on to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely agree. I can see both sides of things because I know that not every bill that they put out there is going to be perfect. There are jobs sometimes tied to some of these things when you talk about cutting tax money and other
Listen.
stuff like that. But when they came and they started looking at all the different items that we're spending our money on. I'm a taxpayer. I pay into taxes, and for me, it doesn't make sense to have all this extra money that's going into to just everything else other than the things that we need. I mean, the schools and fire and all that stuff. I believe 100% that we need all those things. We need teachers. We need
But they
infrastructure
don't
and all
have
that
to
other
be
stuff.
paid by property taxes, and that's the misnomer. And a lot of people have that myth and that whenever I talk about no property taxes, because I'm a huge advocate for it,
Yeah,
everybody comes at me and says, "Well, how are you going to pay for schools and how are you going to pay for roads?" Our one of the counties here actually did a study, and they found that if all they have to do is raise the sales tax by 1 to 2 pennies, and it will more than cover what the school tax was
yeah,
collecting.
mhm,
So, yes, it means a higher consumption tax. But if that means we don't have an IRS, we don't have income tax, we don't have property taxes, but we pay consumption. So anything that's not food, clothing, or fuel,
yeah,
you pay 30 to 40% on, I'd be perfectly happy with that because guess what? The liberals would get their way, I guess. The people who want the rich to pay more. But at the end of the day, we're all paying our fair share because if you earn it, you're not taxed on it. You're just taxed on the money you spend on the luxury items.
Sure. Here's a question for you. I know that I've seen, I work in both the Florida as well as the Virginia market, and it's crazy just the difference between property taxes down here and up there. Um, and not even just that, but also insurance and other things. Down here we have hurricanes, and so the insurance is a lot higher than it would be in other areas.
Oh yeah.
What are you seeing on your side? I mean, is it relatively affordable with the taxes and the insurance and stuff like that, or do you think it's kind of high?
Y'all are high. You have your wind, you have your hurt, all the different insurance types, and then you have um property taxes, HOA, special assessments. Um, Georgia is right behind you. Our property taxes and insurance have gone through the roof. Florida actually passed tort reform 2 years ago, and State Farm just gave a massive refund to a lot of people in Florida for the first time in years because this tort reform basically limits how much they can be sued for. And Georgia passed that law. It went into effect, or it goes into effect, I think, July 1st of this year. So they're saying that insurance rates will start to come down over here in Georgia
Yeah.
over the next 2 years because of that tort reform law. But property taxes have gone through the roof, and they put in place basically a law last year that our counties and the schools could opt out of. So what we wanted for ourselves, the schools and the counties opted out of. So Georgia, I think, passed a law that basically limits how much they can raise our taxes because some people were seeing a 20% increase in 1 year. That
Yeah.
should not be allowed. Like I understand that the prices may have gone up in
Hmm.
COVID days by 20%, but that does not mean that you could sell it today for that price.
Yeah.
So to raise the millage rate and raise property taxes, they've put a limit on it. I believe it's 5% or 3% a year. So that's going to be helpful. But I'll tell you, I mean, Alabama, cheap taxes, cheap insurance, not so great schools.
Hmm.
South Carolina, every state has their pluses and minuses. Florida has no state income tax.
Hmm.
Uh, no Alabama doesn't have, I believe, state income tax either. Tennessee doesn't. Georgia does. Um, there's really pluses and minuses to every state, and I'm licensed in 10.
Oh wow.
So I see, taxes, the highest taxes, Maryland. Those are some pretty high taxes up there.
Wow.
Um, but Virginia is still very, very, very affordable. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of shocked because Virginia has Virginia Beach. Why is the insurance in Virginia Beach even cheaper than it is in any Florida area?
I thought about that because they're coastal. So
Yes,
they've got I mean Florida's coastal, but I mean if you're in Central Florida, it's not like living on the coast. I mean, it's one
right.
big sandbar, and most of the time, I live in Central Florida, and it's like I don't know, like 200 miles or 300 miles to the coast or something. Um or less than that, I don't know.
But I
But
bet you pay more insurance than the guy who lives on Virginia Beach.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, most definitely we do. Like I said, it's crazy just looking at the numbers. How much we spend on things, and then the sad part is they don't even. I had something happen with my house. What was it? A couple of years ago. There was a hurricane that came through, and because I didn't have it was other structures. I didn't have enough in the other structure section. I ended up having to pay for the trees and the tree damage myself, and it was like $11,000.
Oh
So
my God.
they gave me a check for 1,200, and I was like, it was almost an insult. It's like, what in the world? I've spent more than 1,200 on the premiums. Like, that's nuts.
Right.
So they basically just gave me my premium back.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, but like I said, you just have to look over your insurance and make sure that you have everything covered. Now I got other structures a lot higher than that. So
Well,
um,
you live and learn, I guess.
yeah,
And I've lived and learned that I am not going to file a claim unless the house is no longer standing or it is too much for me to replace on my own dollar.
yeah,
Like that was a mistake I made was I filed a claim because the shower pan had a defect or a leak or whatever, and it was obviously before we had moved in, and it was a slow leak, so it started to leak through the bedroom, ruined the bedroom suite, ruined the wall, shower, all that stuff had to be replaced. And it was a $16,000 claim. My insurance went from like 1860 that year. It's like 4 grand a year now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I tell you, they tell you, oh, if it, those roof guys, they come by and they ring the doorbell and they say, oh, we want to, we had a hailstorm. I'm like, you guys are responsible for, you are the reason why our insurance prices are through the roof. And they say, oh, no, it's an act of God. They can't raise your insurance because it was an act of God. I say, please, that, that is like the worst excuse because, yeah, they'll say that they can't do it, but they'll raise it because of something else.
Yeah. I always got kind of get a chuckle out of that comment because they say that is an act of God, so it's actually a company acknowledging God as well. And you're like, all right, let's go.
Yeah,
But it doesn't
exactly.
help. It doesn't help though. So
No,
um
it doesn't. And when they're ringing my doorbell and I'm on a call or whatever, and they're trying to talk me into a roof because XYZ and this neighbor and this neighbor did, and I'm like, and this is why insurance prices around here are through the roof because y'all are all getting
yeah.
your new roofs. Um,
Speaking of roofs, I don't know if you guys have had this, or maybe it's not as prominent up there, but down here, it was like a solar boom or something like that, where solar salesmen, I can't even tell you how many times I need to get a sign that says no solar and just put it in my front yard and just put, because I get solar panel guys showing up at the front door knocking. And then the funny thing is they all say the same thing. They say, have you heard of solar? Has anybody ever given you a quote? Yeah. Everybody
no,
comes to
I've
my
never heard
door.
of it.
I've never heard of solar in my life. Half the houses around here are covered in solar, um, but one thing that I'm noticing, and this is not a knock at solar. I like the idea of solar. I like the idea of getting your electricity from the sun, but we're
When
numbers
it
people.
takes
That's what we
25
do.
years to make your money back, it's like, is
Yeah.
it really worth it?
I always tell them, I said, I'm probably not the best person to talk to because all I do all the day long is run numbers. And what I'm going to do after you give me the quote is I'm going to run the numbers on it and make sure it makes sense. And one of the biggest things is that when you put solar panels on the roof, they'll say, all right, it's 25 years or whatever, and you're going to have a warranty. So that means anything that happens in 25 years, we're going to come out and fix it and all this other stuff. Well, that's great. That sounds awesome. But then what they don't tell you is in Florida, well, not even just in Florida, I think in most places, insurance companies want you to replace your roof roughly about every 10 years. A roof can actually last 15 years, 17 years. It depends on how well you maintain it and storms and storm damage and all that other stuff. But they want you to replace your roof every 10 years. And if not, then they're going to drop you. My insurance company tried to drop me because of the fact that I had a roof that was 9 years old and
Mm-hmm.
it was creeping up on that 10-year mark and they didn't like it. And so what I did was I went ahead and got my roof replaced and they still dropped me.
Yeah.
So I ended up losing the insurance company anyways. But what they don't tell you is when you put the solar panels on your roof, not only is there an option to where maybe they don't seal it properly and there's holes in your roof or whatever. Um, but then you also have the issue of, okay, when I go and replace my roof, how much is it going to cost for the solar company to come out and pull these panels off of my roof?
Right.
Because you have to use that amount. Let's say it's $7,000. So now you have 17,000 for the roof, an additional 7,000 for pulling the panels on and off. And
Yeah.
if you do that every 10 years in that 20-year span of time that you have those solar panels, you spent 16 to 20 or even more than you would have had to, and you have to tack that on to how much you're spending on the solar panels.
Never even thought about the fact that you have to take them off when you do a roof replacement. That is a
Yeah.
very good point.
Yep.
And you have to
Uh
pay a
yeah.
pretty penny for them to come and take it down and then put it back up.
Yeah. I had a
Well,
conversation with a realtor about that yesterday because she said that she was having trouble selling a house that had solar panels on the roof. And she's not the first person to say it. I've got tons of realtors that say, the house
oh,
needs to sell, but then I have to find somebody to take over the payments on the solar panels. And a lot of times we
well,
have to count that in a DTI.
I was about to say, so explain, when somebody has finance solar panels, there's only certain ways that we can do it, and it definitely counts in the debt to income ratio and some loans require them to pay it off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I don't deal with solar panels as much as
they
y'all do.
definitely they definitely do. There are some circumstances that I think if it creates a certain amount of electricity or something like that, and it's written a certain way, I think sometimes you can admit it. But a majority of the times, most lenders are going to want to count it because it is a debt. It's something that you're actively paying on, even though it's taking place of electricity. It's a loan. You're
Yeah.
basically paying on the loan. Um, it always cracks me up when they tell me you're not there's two options. You can rent or you can buy them. And if you go with the rent option, they're like, well, it's going to be the same price as buying. Why would I rent then?
Yeah,
Why would I spend, $75,000 and pay you guys and I don't own them? Like that doesn't make any
right.
sense at all. So, but their argument behind that is that that you wouldn't necessarily have a payment and you're not locked into anything. But we always have to most of the time we have to count the payment. And
Well,
it could, let's say somebody is, especially now, to qualify now compared to, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, you have to have a lot more.
yeah,
And they count all the debts and stuff like that. And so let's say that you qualify for 250, 260,000, and that's your max. That's like if nothing happens and the taxes are exactly what you quoted them as. And you and I know that even though it says, 260, if something comes in higher, the taxes come in higher, maybe the insurance is more because they've got, different types of piping or whatever, then that the client no longer qualifies for that amount anymore. They have to go down.
yep.
So,
Yep, and that's when we have to get creative because it's things come in higher. I mean, it's funny because you don't think about the obvious, but we were at Power Up and there was a girl and they were having a problem with DTI. It kept throwing it into refer, and it was the insurance went up by $5 a month. And there was, I don't know, 5 or 6 of us sitting there trying to brainstorm. Oh, shorten it to 25-year, pay off debts, get a gift for more money. Huh. I don't know why, but it took 6 of us. Like, how many loan officers to take to screw in a light bulb? It was the obvious. Lower the loan amount by $1,000.
yeah,
It worked. Got the DTI in line, and it's like 3 days of us banging our heads together, and here
yeah,
here we go. Here's the answer. And that that's another reason why I love Alcova is that all of us can call somebody, we can phone a friend and get their advice on scenarios. I know a lot of brokers that are my friends. They feel like they're off in another island. They don't feel like they have much communication with the company or with other people that work there. And I know, you and I talk a good bit and
yeah.
did last year before you got sick. So, it's always good to, get a pulse and see what's going on in everybody's backyards. But again, I have to say, I'm amazed. I'm really impressed with your testimony, and it made me cry the first time. It made me cry the second time I heard it.
I'm still crying over it. When
I
I talk about,
know. I mean, and I just saw another mortgage person who, and it's funny because you had just told me a week ago about and then this week I opened up Facebook and I think it was the first video I saw. It was a mortgage person who basically is a guy. He's got 3 kids. He's married. He went along. He thought he had pulled a muscle doing an ab workout, and come to find out, his appendix had burst and he had been
wow,
almost septic.
wow,
And those it's just amazing that bad things happen to you no matter what age you are, but the outcome that you got from it. And I know that you are going to do big things. So I'm so happy to have you back at Alcova, and I'm glad that you lived through it, and you have a great testimony and story to tell.
yeah. The cool part is now that I'm back, I'm building, building my business back. It feels great to be having conversations with realtors and title companies and be. I mean, as well as I do, just it's there's something special about just having those personal relationships with people and checking in with them. A lot of them become friends after working with them a while, and um, it truly does change you when you go through an experience like that and you see how short life is. It carries over into your personal life too. You want to do the best for people. I can tell you right now that I think more about people now than I ever did before, and it's because of the fact that I think of what I went through and understand that we all have an expiration date.
Right.
And when we get to the end of our life, what are we going to have to show for it? Are we going to be people that are being generous to people and kind to people? Are we doing the best that we can in our business to steward the gifts that God's given us? Are we doing the best that we can in our lives to help people through the process? Nobody can do life alone. You know,
Exactly.
I can't even tell you how many times we've had a client come in and nobody's ever showed them simple things like um, I don't know, making sure that your overall debt amount is lower so that having a payment on a mortgage payment. A lot of times it's not. it's not that you can't afford a house. It's maybe you're prioritizing other things in your life,
Right.
credit cards and other things like that. You can always take it and pare down, some things or whatever to be able to qualify. But
Well, and I know that
um,
Aaron and I are both the same type of people. Like, if you come to me and you tell me you are dead set on putting down 20%, but you have $100,000 in credit card debt, we're going to have a long conversation about your structuring and, because I'm going to get it through you one way or the other that this is not the best way to do it. We'll do it your
yeah,
way if you want to do it your way, but it's not going to equate to as much as you want because you're not, structuring it right.
yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me on, by the way.
Yes. No, I enjoyed this so much. And maybe in a couple months we can come back on here and we can see how Aaron's doing and get some more testimony. And I actually had made some homeless bags myself for the unhoused. And I actually last time I went down, it was down MLK, and we brought breakfast to everybody, and everybody was just so thankful. And it
Yeah,
just warms your heart. And to me, giving is the best thing. I've been a giver since I was a kid. I love to give. I don't really like to receive as much as I like to give, but it's the feeling of your heart. And
yeah.
when you told me your story, it gave me that feeling, and I was like, all right, I gotta get this out. I gotta let other people to hear it, and I gotta get you on the Friday call with Alcova because they're gonna love it too.
Yeah. My next goal that I have is I want to be a Scotsman top originator.
Oh, there you
So
go.
yeah, I want to get on the list. So
There
I
you
got
go.
a little bit to go.
Well, we'll get you there. We'll definitely get you there. But well, you have a good night. I'm choking now. Literally you made me cry to the point of choking.
Thank you.
But yeah, we'll check back with you in a couple of months and we will talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.